So when can you breach confidentiality? Surely if we have to keep information confidential, there has to be a time when confidentiality can be breached. Can you think of any examples? It's important to give it some thought because we are seeing the challenge our students are being put under in the interviews, in the MMI circuits are increasing. The challenge is increasing. What do I mean by that? You are seeing lots and lots of scenarios where the student is put in a position in deciding whether they breach confidentiality or not. So you need to know when you can do it and when you can't. I suppose you've paused and you've had a thought about when you can breach confidentiality. Let's try a few. It could be that you have to inform authorities about a patient. So for example, a patient has come to your clinic, has come to the hospital, and has expressed a desire to self-harm. So you might therefore go and speak to colleagues who may be able to help in this situation. For example, the mental health team. What about your patient who says they will walk out into the street and because they are feeling so bad about things, they may actually cause harm to others. They may drive into people. They may cause harm deliberately to other people. So they are intent on doing criminal damage. They are intent on perhaps manslaughter or harm to that degree. What do? Do you allow your patient to go out there and carry out such acts? Or do you intervene? You might have to, in this case, inform the police. You might have to inform the security personnel. Something like that, so as to reprimand your patient, so as to hold them back, perhaps forcefully if needs be. So again, something to think about. You may have to disclose patient information in scenarios involving relatives, partners and so forth. Let's say your patient has infections such as say HIV or hepatitis, something like that, which can be detrimental to your patient's partner should they get the infection from contact with your patient. But your patient doesn't care much about that, or perhaps is intent on spreading the infection. Now, it might sound absurd, but scenarios like that can happen in real life, so therefore they can come up in your interviews. How do you deal with that situation? Have a think about it. Go through some of the scenarios we give to you in our question bank. Go through these questions and try and be proficient. Look at the pros and cons. Look at it from various angles. Okay? Now, I've mentioned before in those examples that yes, you can breach confidentiality if your patient's life is at risk, if other people's life is at risk. From an ethical perspective, from a beneficence and non-maleficence perspective, you may be able to breach confidentiality. From a justice perspective, you may be able to breach confidentiality for the sake of keeping society safe, for the sake of keeping relatives or colleagues safe. All right? Now, there is a principle you must uphold, and you must think about this and include this within your discussion should these questions come up at interview. And that is that you encourage your patient to self-report. Of course, that is given the right circumstances. For example, if a patient is feeling unwell and you ask them to report it to the mental health team. If a patient is not able to drive because they have uncontrolled epilepsy, you must ask them to try and report it to the driving licensing authorities. You may then take matters into your own hands if your patient refuses to. But certainly in these circumstances where there is no immediate danger of life or threat to life, you may give your patient that autonomy to then go and self-report. The key thing that latches onto this issue of asking your patient to report is that you must explain to them why you're thinking as such, why you're advising them as such. What is the importance behind that decision making? So you must have that discussion with them.